Julie Wachowski writes news features, books, and screenplays. She studied creative writing for the media at Northwestern University and received her master's degree in education from UNC Chapel Hill. She was recently chosen as a writer-in-residence at the prestigious Ragdale Foundation, and I'm jealous. She is a member of the Writers Guild of America East. She lives in the Midwest where the winters build character with her family, who are all characters. Look at her at www.jwachowski.com or on Facebook at Julie Wachowski. Julie?
I forgot that I'd sent in that formal introduction. Hello. I'm going to read to you tonight from my first mystery novel, which is titled In Plain View. And it turns out, it's one of those sort of strange artistic coincidences, that the main character is Irish, and her name is Maddie O'Hara. She's from the south side of Chicago, and she is a television video reporter. So I thought that would help you, because we're going to jump right in, quarter of the way into the story. September was a good time to be in Chicago. Another 2 months. The rising sun cast a perfect yellow light on dead grass and reddened sumac leaves. I opened the window to snap a few pictures, and the autumn air rushed at me, crisp with the scent of endings and beginnings. The wind helped blow away the last of the dusty, creepy feeling that had followed me home last night. I was on my way to work. Life was good. It took 20 long minutes to prep for our quickie on-camera interview with Al Lowe, the man whose land had been the site of yesterday's tragedy. The fact that College Boy had managed to find the man and schedule an interview on short notice was a pleasant surprise. We heard Lowe's truck before we saw him. He went off-road and parked 10 feet from where we stood. I offered my hand. "Thanks for coming out to meet us, sir." Lowe was a perfect interview to start. He wore jeans, a Cubs jacket that had seen better days, and a squared-off bill cap. His face and hands bore the weathered tan of outdoor work. Everything about him said farmer. Pure, old-fashioned, regular guy. Whatever he had to say, people would believe. Beautiful view. "Yeah," Lowe replied. Midwesterners could pack more meanings into yeah than Eskimos had words for snow. This one meant sad. What a shame. Ainsley fumbled with the tripod behind us, trying to lock down an even footing for the shot. Not easy. The ground was torn up from the cars, trucks, and police that had been trooping around the day before. Lowe kept his back to the camera as he stared out across the fields that came together like a quilt beneath the eternal blue morning. Not the kind of sky that recorded well. Technology could never get the color of dawn. I stood beside him and gazed unblinking into all that blue. The ground all the way to the horizon held nothing but dirt and straw and the scalloped border of a tree line. Hands in my pockets, I tried for a happy quote. "Reminds me of the pleasant land of counterpane." Lowe looked at me, surprised. In a rusty morning voice, he spoke the words, "I was the giant great and still that sits upon the pillow hill and sees before him dale and plain, the pleasant land of counterpane." My dad used to recite that one, he admitted, with a bashful crook of his head. "Mine too," I said. We were having a moment, so I didn't mention the fact that I was full-grown before I'd understood that the word was P-A-N-E, not P-A-I-N. "Almost ready," Ainsley said. Farmer Lowe and I chatted about hay harvest and dairy feed while the boy wonder locked and loaded. By the time we got to bovine hormones, Lowe was at ease. Interviewing is part skill, part talent, part luck of the draw. When it works, you become the glass through which someone else is seen. Sometimes you blend transparently. Sometimes you reflect. I ran down the establishing facts with Lo pretty quickly. Were you the one to find the body? No. Lo studied his boots, kicked over a clod of dirt. The authorities knew before I did. I got a call from a neighbor who driven by, saw the commotion. About what time was that? Neighbor called when I was finishing my pancakes. Could it have been that neighbor over there? Across the field, the buildings appeared exactly as they were yesterday, the perfect icon of farm, like an illustration from a kid's picture book. The second-story barn window stood open, no sign of binoculars watching. Old Mr. Jost? I couldn't say, Lo mumbled. Ainsley popped his head around the camera. Has he even got a phone? There's a booth out back, Lo answered. To me, he said, the Amish don't allow phones in their homes. It's one of their rules. No wires to the outside world on their homes. They get around it by putting the phone in a separate little building, like a phone booth that's apart from the house. An Amish family lives there? I couldn't help pointing. In that house? Yeah. Lo turned away from me and the relentless stare of the camera. What about cell phones? I asked, thinking of the girl in the bushes. No wires on a cell phone. Do they allow those? I don't think so, he snorted. They'd have to charge it somewhere. Oh, yeah. Joke on me. We done? Lo's reluctance suddenly took a shape I recognized. Did you know the man who died? His chin dropped to his chest. There was silence for a good 20 seconds. Suppose it'll come out sooner or later. Yeah, I knew him. Damn shame. Seemed to be getting along all right these past few years. Boy's name was Tom Jost. He was adopted by my neighbor over there. Lo jerked his head in the direction of the farmhouse. Years ago, kid had a hard life, and old Jost, he tried to do right by him. I respected him for that. Some hard years there for a while. Teenage stuff, mostly. But old Mr. Jost is religious, so he didn't see it that way. Boy left the farm, never came back. Except to die. Why did he choose this tree? No answer. Do you know why Tom chose this tree? Lo's whole face tightened, and I wished he'd have been facing the camera instead of looking over at the farm. Guess I do. Why? The quick glance he shot my way held all sorts of implications, but I needed words for the tape. This going to be on TV, Miss O'Hara? Yes, we hope so. The Amish don't care to be photographed, It was a warning. Stay away from old Mr. Jost. Yes, I'd heard that. Lo turned and pointed a finger at the oak tree. That tree is over 100 years old, The town moved the road for that tree. The morning sun was fully awake and the leaves on the sunny side were glowing. Seen a lot, that tree. It was worth moving the road around it. I nodded. It's a beautiful tree. Suppose that boy would have found himself another tree someplace else. He said it, and it was almost a question. The rest wasn't. There are things worth trying to preserve, Miss O'Hara, even when you can't. I wasn't sure how to answer that. He was speaking a local dialect of neighborhood history, a language I'd never understand without translation. I hesitated, searching for what to ask next, and I lost him. Lo made his decision. He stuck out his rough, tanned hand and shook my own. Goodbye. Interview over. Damn. Well, thanks for agreeing to meet with us, Mr. Lo. That's no problem. Can I ask you one more thing? No. I'm not so young. I can't remember back to the days when shame was still a serious business. As a kid, I remember people averting their eyes at something awful instead of reaching for their video phones. How many times did I hear the words, "Hurry, don't let anyone see. What would the neighbors think?" That's bad enough. But now the pendulum's slung so far the other way that nobody can turn on the TV or open a newspaper without somebody flashing their streaky underpants in your face. How is that an improvement? The problem isn't that it's so painfully tacky. It's that we only have so much time, so much compassion for our fellow human beings. I want to focus on the trouble that matters, ending wars and hunger and the sickness we'd know how to cure if we'd only pay attention, if the freaks would stop distracting us. Which is a long way of explaining that even though people like Farmer Lowe made my job harder, I can't say I always mind. I followed him over to his standard issue rusty pickup. Mr. Lowe? He climbed in the cab and slammed the door shut before he answered. Yeah? That one meant, don't push your luck, lady. No, camera. I'm just wondering, do you have any idea who alerted the authorities about the body? Had to be someone early, Lowe said. Sorry. I said thanks, but it bothered me. Usually it was easy to find the person who tipped the authorities on something like this. Even if it was a random bystander, they generally had an emotional stake in telling the story again. The 30-second hero was an easy interview to bag. One last thing. Have the police identified the body as Tom Jost? I didn't want either of us getting into trouble for not passing along important information. Oh yeah. Lowe hooked a hand over the steering wheel and his mouth registered a nasty tasting frown. They know.